I gotta be honest, this chapter of My Hero Academia has me so hyped for the fight to come. Finally, we have more Big 3 content. But hey, let's not waste any time and just jump right into chapter 361, titled Anomaly. Previously, Mirio objectively told Shigaraki he has no friends. These words seemingly awakened Tenko from within the Shigaraki All For One shared consciousness, as we predicted. We see Tenko like he was during the war arc, surrounded by a massive hands, all gripping onto him. Tenko still looks like a child, as Deku said, and needs to be saved. That being said, Tenko's personality comes to the surface. He doesn't just remember having friends, he shoots back at Mirio saying, "Of course I have real friends!" As if it were a no-brainer, the biggest villain of their time would have friends. Interestingly enough, Tenko doesn't mention Toga, Compress, or Twice. Instead, he mentions Mikun, Tomo-chan, and his dog Mon-chan. We don't know who Mi or Tomo are, but hopefully they will be revealed in a flashback. I mean, previously the only friends Tenko seemed to have were his sister and his dog. And hey, Mirio seemed to be just as shocked by Tenko's comment. In fact, he apologizes. I will say, when I first saw the crop panel of Mirio looking so melancholy, I believed that this was a death chapter. Thankfully, or at least for now, that is not the case. But unfortunately, this chapter also comes with death flags, which we'll get into later. Right after his friend comments, Shigaraki regains control. It seems that even now, Shigaraki isn't a perfect body for All For One. There is still the rebellion of Tenko. Meanwhile, Mirio's internal monologue reveals that despite the empowered Nejire punch, Shigaraki is taking virtually no damage. The heroes can't even break through the villain's skin layer. That very statement sounds crazy on its own. They are still fighting a quirkless Shigaraki and they cannot even damage him. How Deku will be able to is kinda beyond me, but it'll guarantee an amazing fight for sure. Especially because Shigaraki only looks a little bruised from this fight, despite fighting several pro heroes at once. He really and truly is All For One's monster, created specifically as the ultimate evil. But speaking of All For One, Shigaraki feels as if his mind is splitting. His physical body is complete with the merge of Shigaraki and All For One, but his mind is not. There is one loose thread still fighting All For One's presence, and it is none other than the Tenko that surfaced earlier. Surely this instability of Shigaraki's mind will allow Deku more time to arrive, but maybe not. After regaining control, Shigaraki decides that to fight Mirio is no longer worth it. He sees the fight as something that is simply dragging on with no value. In one of the most stone-cold panels, Shigaraki begins to just walk away from Mirio. Yet Shigaraki isn't wrong about the fight. Mirio's only intention was to act as a distraction for him only until Deku arrived. Mirio knows that he can't win this fight, nor can the rest of the pro heroes. Even Bakugo, someone with immense firepower, was easily swatted down by Shigaraki. Not to mention, Bakugo is without any real means to rejoin the fight. As we saw in the last chapter, both his gauntlets and one of his arms have been broken. This is not an equal fight, but a fight against the clock. But regardless of their dire situation, Mirio is still trying to grab the attention of Shigaraki. He faces through the villain's wall of hands, goading him to continue fighting. It's a noble endeavor considering Shigaraki decided to turn his attention to Bakugo and Bajinist. Clearly, he still plans to kill Bakugo to enrage Deku. And to reach this goal, a massive wall of mutated hands begins to come towards Bajinist and Bakugo. Leading the charge of this insane body horror attack is none other than Shigaraki. I suppose you can't fault him for wanting to finish off what he started. Due to his injuries, Bakugo can only look on in horror. I bet this chapter and last week's have been nothing but a sludge villain flashback for Bakugo. He's up against a villain and was expected to be at least formidable against him, and yet he's been reduced to support. Well, hopefully it's support, considering his arm is broken so badly it is twisted. However, let's pivot back to the fight at hand. Ooh, bad pun. While advancing towards Genis and Bakugo, Shigaraki remarks that he won't fight Mirio because Mirio is simply trying to buy time. Then we get a flashback. It's more Big 3 content, so Big 3 fans like myself have been eating real good these past few chapters. That aside, the flashback shows Mirio telling Nejire and Tamaki to keep Shigaraki distracted while he rescues Bakugo. After saving Bakugo, Mirio volunteers to fight Shigaraki in close quarters combat while avoiding damage. And hey, big props to Mirio for wanting to fight this guy in close quarters combat. The guy isn't human enough now that quirks simply do nothing to him. However, this is all meant to not only buy Deku time, but Tamaki as well. Mirio ominously states that fighting Shigaraki is for Tamaki to get that ready. In response, Tamaki gives a desperate, if not scared, expression. In the last war, we only saw a couple of Tamaki's moves, and something tells me that by Mirio's wording, it is an attack only to be used if absolutely necessary. It is very likely it is a move we haven't seen, perhaps even something Tamaki developed after the war. Either way, it's powerful enough that Mirio believes it will do damage to Shigaraki. which definitely says something considering Shigaraki is literally destroying the heroes despite being quirkless. Best prepares to fight Shigaraki, which is admirable considering he is injured as well and still functioning with one lung. Though it was a bit accurate of Best to refer to Shigaraki as a demon. He has truly transcended beyond a quirk-empowered individual and become so much more. Yet Shigaraki knows he has Genis and Bakugo cornered. As he winds up a huge attack, Shigaraki tells Genis he must be struggling to stay awake. Even now, Shigaraki remains the trash talk king. But thankfully a gigantic Nejire pike comes to disrupt Shigaraki. At last, more meaningful Nejire content. I have been waiting to see her in action like this. It felt like she was underutilized during the war arc. Like her comrades, Nejire is giving it her all against Shigaraki. Say what you want about Horikoshi, but you cannot deny that he has some really neat combat scenes for the women. Speaking of which, Nejire herself looks so determined. It is the first time I think we have seen her presence be so impactful. Not only did she provide the energy for Mirio's punch, but she is offering support for Bakugo and Best Jeanist. So yeah, Nejire is definitely coming in clutch. From there we then see Shigaraki thinking back to what the purpose of the arena is. It is meant to act as the final stand against Shigaraki, or in other words, his funeral. However, Shigaraki decides to shoot back with a witty remark. He tells the heroes that this isn't his final resting place. Instead, the heroes have built their own casket. Reading this line for the first time sent shivers down my spine. It is so downright disrespectful, which is simply too on brand for Shigaraki. We are talking about a guy who picked up another character by the hair with his toes last week. Plus, it is such a stone cold line. Shigaraki is so sure he will kill the heroes, which makes me wonder what he would do afterwards. Would he immediately leave to hunt down Deku? Only time will tell. And man, on the subject of time, this chapter itself is full of flashbacks. While taking on Shigaraki, Nejire has one of her own. But before we jump into that, it is important to know the damage she has received. Nejire dived into a swarm of mutated hands, which understandably injured her. It's difficult to tell the exact extent from the panel, but what we see is not good. At the very least, she has a stomach wound and an injury to her upper body. Between the two, her stomach wound is more noticeable. However, it is unfortunate. Nejire has not only been wounded, but has gotten the good old shonen treatment of a flashback. Both of those things together make me worry that she will die. Tamaki even previously mentioned he wanted to graduate. That line in of itself feels as if the big three will not make it. Regardless, the flashback shows Nejire sitting alone in class. Her narrative reveals that before Mirio and Tamaki, she had no friends. It's a similar parallel to Bakugo, but in the opposite direction. Rather than being praised for a powerful quirk, Nejire was alienated. Horikoshi just continues to lay parallel upon parallel, and I must admit that I love it. Really, that explains why she was so perplexed by people cheering her on during the beauty contest. Interestingly enough, Tamaki was the one to approach her, mimicking the same way Mirio befriended him. At the end of the day, my hero is about friendship. It's the very same idea of friendship that Nejire thinks back on. She remembers the kindness extended to her by both Tamaki and Mirio. This branch of community is exactly what allowed her to get to know other classmates as well. Nejire looks at it as something that allowed her to become stronger, which once again is such a prominent theme. This also explains why Nejire is such an exuberant character that gets easily excited by meeting new characters. She's super hyper, bubbly, and practically bouncing off the walls because she wants friends. Previously, Hawks had mentioned that One for All is a network of hope, which is exactly what Nejire saw within Mirio and Tamaki. You can even see it in the panels. Nejire does not look like Nejire before she actually made friends. It is this strong friendship that even created the big three to begin with. If Tamaki and Mirio hadn't reached out to Nejire, we wouldn't have this amazing team up, nor would we finally see Nejire in the spotlight. She has always been a part of the big three, but up until now, it has felt as if she was more of a background character between Tamaki and Mirio. For her, there wasn't anything outside the overhaul arc that stood out, but at long last, we see exactly why Nejire is a part of the big three. Truthfully, this chapter is pretty short, yet it is so satisfying. But this isn't entirely about Nejire. Through her, we know what Tamaki's ultimate move is. She refers to it as cornucopia combination. We heard this phrase in the last chapter as well, but it was in reference to the combination of Tamaki's poison and octopus camouflage. Either way, Nejire states it is an attack that takes time to prepare. Knowing Tamaki's quirk and how it works, that only makes sense. He can only take on the traits of the food he eats, and fighting against Shigaraki doesn't allow for much breathing room to eat. But now the time has come. We get this gorgeous 2-page spread of Tamaki and this insanely large organic canon of different animals and fruits plus Nejire's energy. For example, Tamaki's attack has a zebra tarantula, dragon fruit, pufferfish, sweet potatoes, African alligator, and many others. The traits of these animals and fruits are hard to make out considering Tamaki's canon, while organic looks like something out of a mecha anime. Like Nejire's moment, it proves why Tamaki is in the big three. And you know what, prior to this I assumed he only could take on the traits of animals he ate. It's interesting that now it's canon, another pun, that he can take the traits of fruits as well. Even though Tamaki's friends realize his potential, it is recognized that his quirk has no real limit to how much he can manifest. And because of that, they believe Tamaki is the only one who can do any real damage against Shigaraki for now. And I definitely love this because that boy Sun Eater is no doubt in my top 5, so to see him doing all this is just so hype. And man, what a cliffhanger. I gotta see Nejirai's injury and Tamaki's trump card for sure with the next chapter, so hopefully we get to see more of this fight in the next one. And listen, I know the vibe was off for a bunch of fans previously, but lately My Hero Academia has been coming correct with that heat week after week after week after week, so I need to know how you guys are feeling about these chapters lately. As always, I'm Sliceable Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.